Hey, welcome back to the Brewnum channel. I'm Mike.
And I'm Joey.
And today we're going to be doing a clone of one of my favorite beers, the Edmund Fitzgerald from Great Lakes. So if you enjoy American porters, sit back and relax and we'll show you how it's done.
For ingredients, we're going to need a ½ ounce of Fuggle hop pellets, 3/4 of an ounce of Northern Brewer hop pellets, a ½ ounce of Cascade hop pellets, British style ale yeast, 8 ounces of roasted barley, and the brand is Briess, 8 ounces of chocolate malts, the brand is Briess, 12 ounces of dark crystal 77L, the brand is Crisp, 11 pounds of pale ale 2-row, the brand is also Briess. Okay, so today we're going to need a few things. We're going to need a mixing spoon, a measuring container that contains our sanitation solution, a strainer, a stock pot for our Sparge water, Whirlfloc clarifiers.
We'll also have, this is what we're using for sanitizer. Here's our cleaner. We have a spray bottle for easy sanitation. We also have our thermometer. We also have our hydrometer, some yeast nutrients. We also have our fermenter with our cooling system and airlock. We also have our double Wort chiller that we'll be using, and then also 5.5 gallons of water that's going straight into our Anvil Foundry, and then 1 gallon of Sparge water. And then obviously I already mentioned, but we'll also be using the Anvil Foundry for this brew. So we finally got our strike up to 159 degrees Fahrenheit. As you can see, this took around an hour at 120 volts. So I'm gonna go ahead and start our mashing. As you can see, we've already pre-mixed our grains. We're gonna start slowly pouring this in because we don't want to have any dough balls. And essentially what that means is that your grains will start clumping into what would look like a dough ball. And that makes it a little bit more difficult for when you're recirculating. It pretty much gives you a stuck mash. So as we're pouring this in, we should see the temperature dropping down. And as we're pouring in, we're going to turn off the unit really quick so that we're not staying at that 159, because the goal of this is, though we're starting the strike water at 159, as we're pouring in, we're trying to get our temperature to decrease to about 155 degrees Fahrenheit. So normally for this type of brew, you wouldn't need something like rice hulls. We typically use these for something that's like oats, something that's going to get really clumpy. But for some reason, this just feels very sticky, just very clumpy. What we're trying to do is get rid of a stuck mash as we're recirculating. So we'll start pouring these in. So I don't know the science behind it, but what I do know is this kind of like separates the grain out from the liquid, and it helps it so that it can circulate a little bit easier. So we're going to give this a good stir. And as you can see, our temperature did drop a little bit lower than what we were expected, so we'll make sure to set that to 155. And then we're going to let it sit for 10 minutes and steep, kind of loosen everything up, and then we'll get ready for our next step. So as it's steeping, just make sure that you set the power to 50% so that it doesn't go over temperature.
All right, so this is steep for 10 minutes now, and we're going to give this a quick stir. All right, and now we're going to put the filter on top, the lid, and set up the pump. Place that in there. Okay, so we're going to open up the valve, and then we're going to turn on the pump. And we want this in a slow medium pour. It's a little too quick. So we have this all set up, and we want the power between 50 to 80%. And the reason when we want it between 50 to 80% is so that way the unit's not constantly running. And this will go for 1 hour. We're going to stir every 15 minutes. And at the last 20 minutes of the hour, we're going to start our Sparge water.
Now that we're wrapping up with our mash and getting towards our mash out, we're going to go ahead and get our Sparge water and confirm it's 175 degrees Fahrenheit. And then we're going to go up here, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to boost this guy to 170. Make sure our power's at 100% so we could get there a little bit faster. And then once it hits 170, we're going to let this rest for 10 minutes, kind of loosen up the grains so that when we're extracting our sugars during the sparge, that we're able to pull them out a lot easier. So we're also going to go ahead and we could go ahead and shut off the valve and stop with our recirculation. So before we start our sparge, we're going to go ahead and just shut off the unit. All right, so we're getting ready for the sparge. So that has already steeped for 10 minutes. And we threw our drain pipe up, and it's been draining out for the last 5 minutes. We're not really seeing a lot of activity draining out, so we're going to go ahead and start our sparge. So we have our water here, and then we're going to slowly pour this into our malt pipe. And as you can see, Anvil has all these pre-drilled holes, so it's going to make distributing the water out a lot easier. And just to recap, this is essentially just pulling out any leftover sugar that's left in the grain. So the next step is we're going to let this drain out for a couple of minutes. Once we don't hear any water flowing down anymore, we're going to go ahead, turn the Anvil back up to 100%, and we're going to get it to that boiling point.
Okay, so now we have reached a temperature of 212. It took about a half hour, and we're going to put in our first set of hops, which is 0.75 ounces of the Northern Brewer hops. And we're going to put this in the beginning of the boil. Pour this in. And this boil will go for 1 hour. 30 minutes into the boil, we're going to put in our second set of hops, which will be the Fuggle. It will be a total of a half ounce. At the last 15 minutes of the boil, we're putting a Wort chiller for sanitation. And this is optional. At the last 15 minutes of the boil, we're putting a half a tablet of Whirlfloc clarifier to add more clarity to the beer. And this is also optional. At the last 10 minutes of the boil, we're putting 5 teaspoons of yeast nutrients. And after the boil, we'll put in a half ounce of the Cascade hops.
Okay, now that the boil is over, we're going to first turn off the unit. And anything touching the wort from this point on, we want to make sure we sanitize. And we're going to bring down the temperature to between 60 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And the reason why is because we don't want to kill the yeast.
All right, so we finally cooled our wort down to 70 degrees, and we're going to go ahead and take a quick hydrometer reading. And look at that. This is 1.070. And now we can get ready to pitch the yeast. So let's first sanitize our scissors and then the yeast packet. And we're going to add our British ale dry yeast. Now that that is pitched, we're going to go ahead and aerate the wort by shaking the bottle for about a minute. This is basically adding oxygen to the yeast. At a high level, this is allowing the yeast to grow and multiply so that the new yeast can then eat up the sugar and create alcohol. But do be careful, because if you shake for too long, you can cause some oxidation, which will add some off flavors to your beer. So the next thing is we're gonna go ahead and add in our RAPT pellet. This is something new. So basically what this is allowing us to do, we can check the fermentation without taking any gravity reading. So you just throw it in and it tracks what the ABV is at the time. All right, everyone. Well, that was it. We finished up brewing up the porter. So thank you for sitting along on our journey. The only thing really left to do now is we're going to have to let this sit in a cool, dark place for about 2 weeks. We're going to go ahead and hook up our InkBird / our temperature control. Goes down a little bit too warm. This will pick up, see that it's going past 68 degrees, and then that will allow cool water to circulate through this, and then it will cool it back down. Best part is, with the new RAPT pill that we have, we're going to be able to track this the entire way. So once it's done fermenting, we'll see it right on an app and we'll know when this is good to go. So once that's done fermenting, we're going to bring that upstairs. We're going to bottle condition and then let the bottle sit for another 2 weeks. And once that's done, you're good to go. You could go drink your beer. A lot of grain for this one.
You got 11 pounds. Wow.
She could take it. Switch me, Joey. You're turning red, bro. You cool? Bro's like, dog, I go to the gym, but I ain't no brewer. But this guy is really thick, and that sounded weird when you say that.
How thick is he?
Yeah, girth is amazing. Cut that part out.
Oh, you're fine. All right, so now this says... What's it? Wait, what?
You started talking and I was like down here. I'm like, yo.
You're looking at my crotch.
All right.
We got
All
Gonzo over here.
Okay, so... Fuck. Shut the